Well, ladies and gentlemen, it just happened. Breaking news. Jon Jones has retired from the UFC. This is just moments after UFC Baku, a card that was pretty interesting, had some good scraps. And in the main event, I was, once again, W.A.D.E cursed completely wrong about Jamal Hill doing anything to change what's got him into trouble in his last couple of fights. And instead, Khalil Roundtree, being the samurai that he is in his custom UFC shorts, getting the victory and piecing up Jamal. And that's something I probably should have made a dedicated video about on this channel, but right now we have more pressing matters. No offense to either of those fighters. Jon Jones has now been confirmed to have retired from Dana White himself in the post-fight press conference of UFC Baku. This is massive news for the UFC. It's massive news going forward. And I don't hate to say it, actually. I actually love to say it. Everybody on MMA YouTube was right. Everybody that said that Jon Jones was never going to fight Tom Aspinall was right. Everyone that said that Jon Jones was ducking Tom Aspinall was right, and it just got confirmed. The breakdown, let's go.
Jon Jones called us last night and retired. Jon Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC.
Bang! All right, yeah, I'm excited. Tom Aspinall is finally what, in my opinion, he always was when he won the belt and defended the interim belt. He is now the undisputed heavyweight champion of the UFC. And yes, this is bittersweet because I think everybody wanted to see Jon Jones fight Tom Aspinall for whatever reasons you had. If you thought that Jon was over the hill, if you thought Tom deserved that right to win the belt from the man that had it before him, all of that is valid. And I think that it should have happened that way. But we don't live in a perfect world. And certainly in the UFC, not a perfect company, but I guess they tried to exhaust every option with Jon. I don't know. Trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but this is long past overdue. But finally, the Rock voice, finally, we get the desired result. Even though, again, it's not the way anyone wanted it, it just needed to happen. They had waited for Jon to make a decision. Apparently, from Ariel Helwani, they had offered Jon a ton of money, and he still turned that down. And it was just one of these things where they were not going to make a deal. That's what I assume happened here. They just could not get Jon to say yes. And as you heard Dana say there, Jon called him and retired last night. And it is a little bit of an odd situation because we did see Jon Jones just on the Nelk Boys podcast and having his happy dads. And as soon as he was asked a question, par for the course, about Tom Aspinall, he dipset it out of the podcast. Didn't want any part of it. But I think it's also unfortunate that the UFC did not step out and make this decision. They had to have Jon Jones come to them and offer the belt up. That to me is bizarre. And again, it shows me that the UFC was not inclined to strip Jon, that they weren't going to unless he gave up the belt. And why was that what it took? Why was it Jon giving the belt up to the UFC? Again, the company that owns the product, that owns the belt, for them to say, this is not going to work. We are killing our own heavyweight division in lieu of potentially, hopefully, getting Jon to come back, however long that takes, however long we have to put Tom Aspinall on the shelf, however long we have to have him in an interim spot, defending an interim belt while the heavyweight champion is healthy and just doesn't want to fight. And again, some people will say, well, he never beat Jon Jones for it, but that's not his fault. I mean, Tom Aspinall did everything he could to fight Jon Jones. So look at this however you want, but the point remains, Jon can still be one of, if not the greatest to have ever fought in MMA, but he ducked Tom Aspinall, and it's clear now. And there's no way to really excuse it. I mean, yeah, you can say Jon didn't feel like Tom was valued enough to fight him, but he still ducked Tom Aspinall. He still didn't want any part of the Tom Aspinall fight. And I even hesitated for a long time to say, oh, Jon's not scared, none of that. And Jon's probably not petrified, but he is understanding of one thing, that Tom Aspinall throws a wrench into the GOAT talks if he fights him, because Tom Aspinall presents more of a danger to Jon Jones than Stipe Miocic did. And that is the only reason Jon Jones retired, because Tom Aspinall was too dangerous to fight. Point blank period, that was it. He was too dangerous for Jon to take the risk. And that's a duck, folks. Whether you want to believe that or not, or whether you want to consider Jon the greatest of all time or one of the greatest of all time, doesn't really matter. Because I think Jon is the greatest fighter I have ever seen with my own two eyes. But he ducked Tom Aspinall, and I'll give you the reasons for it. Number one, you can't convince me that Jon didn't have the motivation to fight, because a couple of days ago on Twitter, he was calling out Francis Ngannou because Francis was rumored to come back. Number two, Jon got all the money he wanted out of this, or at least he was supposed to. Found a way to convince the UFC to give him the number he was asking for, and he still said no. That tells you all you need to know about what Jon thought about this fight. He wanted no part of it. Point blank, period. And you can't get around that fact. That'll stick on his legacy, right? Not fighting Tom and not doing the same thing other fighters in the past have done when the newest young challenger comes up to fight them for their belt. Not saying Jon ever had to do that, but he also had his cake and ate it too, because he didn't fight Tom and also held on to the belt for as long as, and almost became the longest reigning heavyweight champion in UFC history without fighting more than twice. Now again, it is surreal because we are seeing one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest ever, retire in a moment's notice. Here today, gone tomorrow. No big announcement, no press conference, just done. While that stain on his legacy will come from the Tom Aspinall fight and potentially even, the Francis Ngannou fight when Francis was a part of the UFC that never happened, he does have 14 years of being elite. He's 14, 15, 16 title fights, 12 title defenses. Jon beat the best of the era before him, the best of the era he was in, and the next era that came through. Beat the generation before him, essentially the veterans and the top level of the generation that had already solidified themselves as he was coming into MMA. Then he beat his generation of fighters, the Mauricio Shogun, Huas, and the Rashad Evanses, and the Rampages, and all those guys. And then he beat his era of fighters, right? The DC, the Gustafsons, Vitor Belforts, the Lyoto Machidas. Then he beat the next generation. However you feel about the Dominic Reyes fight, which I think was a fight he probably should have lost. Beat Anthony Smith. I know that's not a great win on paper now. Beat Thiago Santos. Beat that next generation. Then moved to heavyweight. Beat the number one guy there at the time. I know Francis wasn't there, and Jon probably should have fought Francis. It's another stain that we'll always say, damn, wish we would have got that fight. And again, I think we didn't because of Jon Jones. But then he goes and beats Cyril Gane fairly easily, beats Stipe Miocic, which was way over the hill. I understand that wasn't the Stipe that was considered one of the greatest heavyweights ever, but still beat him fairly easily. And Jon has racked up 2 belts in 2 different divisions. Still think he's one of the greatest to ever do it. So yeah, it's a bummer that we didn't get that final punctuation mark on Jon's career. Him going out on top and really leaving no doubt that he's the greatest ever. If he would have beat Tom Aspinall, there would have been no doubt. There would have been nobody in this comment section telling me I'm an idiot because I'd said Jon Jones is the greatest. And I think that is a part of the reason that he won't be looked at that way, is because we didn't get that final point. Whether it was good or bad, we didn't get that go out on your shield, warrior style of ending for Jon Jones' career. And that's not necessarily a problem, but it kind of is when you drag out an entire division for a year plus just for the UFC to be at your beck and call. And then eventually you do the thing that Jon Jones, of course, does in this situation and control the narrative and control how this whole thing goes by saying, well, I don't want to fight for the belt. Tom is not worth me fighting him. So here, go have the belt. And I'm sure you're going to see Jon Jones on Twitter saying in the next couple of weeks or months, he can have the belt, but he never won it off me. That kind of mentality, I'm sure, is coming down the line. And that's just what I see happening. Jon trolling on Twitter for the next couple of months. But this is a massive moment. Jon Jones was a massive part of MMA for the last 15 years. And whether you want to believe this or not, and I'm glad that Jon's given the belt up. I'm glad if he's going to ride off into the sunset that he's not taking the belt with him. But whether you want to believe this or not, he is one of the last major names in the sport right now, at least on American soil. And that may be a problem for the UFC because we've all talked about how they are having trouble creating stars, having trouble finding that next big superstar to come out of the octagon, and maybe it'll be Ilia Topuria, or maybe it'll be Islam Makhachev, and maybe it'll be somebody else, Paddy the Baddy, Tom Aspinall, who knows? But we do know that Jon, even though he wasn't a massive pay-per-view draw, he was a star. And again, he was the greatest, in my opinion, or one of the greatest that's ever been in the octagon. So whatever you think about him, whether you like him or not as a fighter, whether you like him or not as a person, all that aside, this will be a massive hit for the heavyweight division that Jon is not fighting Tom Aspinall. But again, it's bittersweet because at least if you're going to take that hit, Jon is giving the belt up and not just squatting on. And Tom Aspinall, as the rightful champion now, and the rest of the division can move on. And maybe Tom becomes a big superstar and Jon says, you know what? It's time to come back. But I doubt that happens. If he's not going to fight him now, I don't see why Jon would take another year off or another 2 years off, then come back and try to fight him again. But who knows? Breaking news, though, I wanted to get this to you guys as soon as it happened. Just now dropped. Jon Jones is retiring from the sport of MMA and from the UFC. It's massive news, whether you like it or not. One of the greatest of all time is done. What do you guys think in the comments below about Jon retiring, Tom Aspinall becoming the new heavyweight champion, undisputed? Let me know down below, and what happens next for the UFC, Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones. Don't have those answers, but I guess we'll find out.
Like, ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like